Peter, and thanks for the introduction. Jody and myself have both over 36 years teaching experience, and primarily today what we're going to talk about is, out of that 36 years, what have we learned about the needs of children? And I suppose one key message that we would say is, to be a good coach at child level, you first of all need to know what the needs of the child are, and then you have to make a really strong effort to try and fulfill and meet those needs. And sometimes the needs of the child may not correspond with our needs as adults. Last September, those of us who are big into hurling were fascinated with a fantastic photograph that appeared in the national newspaper round about the time of the Cork-Clare All-Ireland series. It was taken in Jody's school in Crathlow in County Clare back in 1995. So Jody, you'll tell us a little bit about that photograph.
Yeah, I suppose in September the arrival of a new junior infant class in a school is an exciting time, and we were delighted that September because we had a big junior infant class. But more so we were delighted because in '95 Clare won the Liam McCarthy Cup for the first time in 81 years, and Tony Considine, an ex-pupil, came to visit the school with Davy Fitzgerald there, Shawnee McMahon and Michael O'Halloran. Little did we think that 18 years later that 4 of these lads would be bringing the Liam McCarthy back to Clare, as well as 2 other club members. We did, however, know that introducing real-life local role models is very important to children. You know, introducing role models that they can look up to, that they can meet, because children are very impressionable at that age. And Paudie, you'd like to say something about that?
I suppose as a Tipperary man, like, you know, that picture kind of upsets me a little bit, but sure, we'll have to drive on anyway. No, as Jody said, one thing we would have picked up over the years, and we're just sharing with you the bits and pieces we would have picked up over 36 years in primary school as teacher and principal. Children look up the whole time. The kid in second class looks up to the lad in 6th class. The child in 6th class looks up to the teenager, and they all look up to the adult. And that's a real challenge for us, because if they are as impressionable as Jody said, and if they are looking up to us, then that puts a huge stress on us that we have to behave and that our actions have to match up with our words. A little story from my own place is that many children in our school cycle to school, and I like cycling myself, and I'd always be telling them to wear a helmet. And invariably, if I happen to go out myself around the local area on the bike, the 1 or 2 times I might do so without a helmet, next day in school, you'll have some kid comes up to you, Mr. O'Neill, you had no helmet on you yesterday. So our actions have to match up with our words. And children really, they will judge us by our actions, not so much by what we say. They'll do what we do more than what we say. And in the title for the presentation today, we had the word foster. And we look upon coaching at child level, it's fostering. It's more than coaching, it's more than drills. And Jody and myself have often chatted about this over the years. And on that notion of fostering, Jody, you'd have a few things to say.
Yeah, if you're to foster a love of the games and the children, you must reach out and have an empathy for where they are at. You know, it's not where the adult is at, it's where they're at. And, you know, put very simply, being kind to them. You can see this coach is being kind to this young fella. He's a sore knee. There's no point in that moment in saying, God, your father played in a county final 20 years ago with 2 broken fingers. Or, your older brother was a hard man. What kind of a mother's blouse are you? Do you know, you must reach out and have a child-centered approach. And without using jargon, what does that mean? It means putting the needs of the child first. And this will be evident in the way you'll communicate. When the coach meets the children, when they come to the field, do you greet them warmly? Greet them by their first name? Do you use appropriate language? Keep out the F's out of it. It will also be evident in the way in which you conduct your drills out in the field. You know, if we have 16 girls and 4 cones, and we're doing a pick-up drill, and we put the 4 best girls at 1 cone and the 4 weakest at 1, what's the message for the 4 weakest children? They feel a bit undermined and demoralized by it. And as well as that, you're inclined to make prima donnas out of the 4 at the excellent one. So we must be very careful that the decisions we make out there coaching are child-centred, not drill-centred. Another thing that we're working at all the time while we're out on the field is working at the relationships. Okay, we're trying to get the drills right, the games right, we're trying to improve the competence, but we talk about 3 R's in school, reading, writing, arithmetic, but the 3 R's we're talking about here are recruiting children, retaining them, and if we have to do that, we have to foster the relationships. Another thing we must remember when we're down there at the field training is that we're making memories. And this is always strikes home to me when I meet youngsters years after, and I might be thinking that I had a fantastic drill done and fantastic coaching session. And what will they remember? They'll remember the most stupid thing. The day some young fella slipped into a pool of water and got himself dirty. The day that the ball burst. The day that a dog came in. So you must remember that there's magic moments down at the field that the children remember. This is what they're thinking of. They're thinking of what has happened to them in a funny way. Now, all this sounds, and I know you're all very down-to-earth coaches, this sounds easy, but as Paudie will explain, there are plenty of challenges to fostering this kind of a warm environment.
Yeah, as Jody said, like, it's about making memories, and I'd always be thinking about the magic moments, creating magic moments for the children, and that's meeting their needs. Now, it's not easily done, but one thing that the GAA under Pat Daly has developed, I think, is a brilliant model of the player pathway, that if we get it into our heads, child, youth and adult, and that there are 3 distinct and separate levels. And Jody and myself both coach at different levels, and we coach at youth level and we coach at adult level. But fundamentally, if you're at child level, you're talking about play to learn, as Michal referred to earlier. It's long term, it's not a quick fix solution, it's not a quick fix win. You're really thinking 10 years ahead. Youth level, it's learning to compete. That's say under 16 minor. You get into the stage where it's about compete. And as I say, for those of us who are mad enough, bad enough or sad enough to get involved in adult level, we know that it's compete to win. The danger signals. We think there's a huge danger involved where the adult model is imposed down on children. Physically, they're not ready for it. Psychologically, they're not ready for it. And it leads to massive problems. And I'm not speaking here today now as somebody who always did things right. And I think back on decisions that I made even with school teams going back 20 years ago, and I say, if I was to do that again now, I wouldn't have made the decision I made, or I wouldn't have handled things in a way. Because the dilemma we face is to win the game, but you lose the child. And as Michal said in his introduction, myself and Jody today are just throwing out ideas to you. We have no difficulty with competition. We think competition is great. But we do think that there is a need for a major discussion in the GAA as to really how we judge success. There's a photograph there of one of our school teams taken a year or 2 ago, and the girl, Camogie, our girls' football here in Croke Park. Okay, it's great. The trophy is won. But the question, as I went on in teaching, I began to ask myself was, right, we won the trophy, but what was the collateral damage? How many children were brought to Croke Park that day and never got onto the pitch? And their mothers and fathers and grandparents, they're disappointed. Or did we have a culture of taking a child off when he or she made a mistake? So sometimes success in winning the trophy can mask an awful lot of other issues. My definition now of a really excellent child coach is somebody who can take the long-term view and will have as many as possible of those children playing in 10 years' time, and that those children will have a deep love and affinity for Gaelic games. Now that is going counterintuitive, because all of us are competitive. I'm a very competitive individual. And I think we've got to ask ourselves and start the discussion in the GAA, if we're putting trophies up at an underage level, we are going against, I think myself, the needs of the child in many cases. I was asked to present a trophy this year down in Tipperary, an under-10 blitz, and the mentors were excellent. They were absolutely excellent. And the children were being presented with their medals. They were the runners-up. They were getting their silver medals. every single one of those children was crying. Now, it wasn't that they'd been abused or anything by the mentors. They hadn't. But the whole model was they knew that they hadn't won. If I was to talk about then the one thing I learned over the years, the last 36 years, since in 1977 I left St. Pat's in Drumcondra, along with luminaries like Pat Daly there and Liam O'Neill. I mean, it was absolutely unbelievably talented people that came out that year. Unbelievably talented. And what was the one thing I've learned now that I didn't know then? That children have a massive, incredible need to belong. Their need to belong is overwhelming. I didn't appreciate it then. And Jody and myself, we talk over the years. In our school, we used to give out the jerseys at lunchtime for matches after school. The first thing, and Jody and myself often chat about it, the child would put out on the jersey and run out to the playground. It didn't matter if they were on the first team, the second team, or the third team. And in our school, every girl and boy, we gave them an opportunity of playing on some team. But why? They put on the jersey because they wanted the message to go out, I belong. I am part of a group. And that photograph there of a school team last year, I think, or 2012 in Croke Park, you'll see in the back row there are two lads, one born in Congo and the other born in Nigeria. As soon as they grabbed a sliotar and hit a ball, they were accepted. The colour of their skin no longer mattered. There are two children in that group who are special needs children, both of whom had special needs assistants in school. And their teachers would tell me that the turning point for them was when they got onto a school team, when they started hurling in school, because their classmates then looked upon them differently. They were no longer the special needs kids. They were the hurler or the footballer. That need to belong, though, is very, very strong with children. And we've got to ask ourselves the questions. Do we, in our actions as coaches, do we exclude them? And again, it goes back to the structure of our competitions. You know, maybe there are 20 children in that photograph. I know the biggest pressure on me that day in going into Croke Park was to make sure that every one of them got in the field. And that might be going against my intuitive need to win the match. We talk about the GAA family, and there are so many positive things going on in the GAA family. I think it's a brilliant photograph. In a family, there's a place for everyone. And those two children there, they're wheelchair bound, but they can still participate. And I just want to say to this opportunity that I think the GAA, and it's reflected here this morning, 700 plus people here at this presentation, a fantastic voluntary organisation. But I think good and all as we are doing things, every good organisation will always ask the hard questions when things are going well. And if things are going well for us, now we need to ask the hard questions about some of our practices that maybe are not so good.
I suppose the most obvious one is the exclusion, and we have a picture here of the subs. It makes the child angry, and it makes the parents angry, because if a child comes home and asks their child, or the parent asks, how did you get on today? Oh, I wasn't playing at all. Mammy and Daddy are angry, and the child is angry. And the Go Games model is fantastic in this respect, because everybody gets to play all the time. And I know Paudie and myself are, you know, we've been involved with Come on a Month School for years. We've enjoyed the structures they've put in place. But as principals in schools, we have to be careful that we put in place opportunities for all the lads to play. And many schools, if they're having a game against another school now, they'll organise a second and a third game so that everybody who comes on the day gets to play. And that's all they want. They're really delighted with this. They go to play. It doesn't matter to them, the first team, the second team. Once they all get a go, they're as proud as peacocks when they come back. Another form of exclusion, a little bit more subtle, is when coaches within training session organise in a way that some people feel excluded. Now, we've all been in situations where you have 20 players and the coach decides, look, I'm going to have 6 backs and 6 forwards, and I'm going to let the other 6 outside and puck it in. What way do you think the lads outside feel? And as Paudie says, I have experienced this from child to youth adult. And adults don't like it either, believe me. They come away from that training session and say, what the fuck was I doing outside? They're pucking balls into the boys. And the other side of that is that you're also making kind of elites out of the inside fellas, you know, thinking, oh, we're the top dogs here, we're the boys, we're the main men here. Another obvious form of subtle exclusion that often occurs is, comes a time for having a little bit of a game, and out of just laziness we say, hey lads, the two of you pick the team. So this fella picks his team, this fella picks him, and you have the first 3 or 4 gone. And the last 3 that are left, how do they feel? They feel awful, because as we have said, children are very fragile, and we're all fragile in our own way. And we're going to have a look here now at a man that he's the greatest rugby player of his generation, or any generation, right? He's probably always been an automatic choice on the teams that he represented. He's nearing the end of his career now. He'd probably go on to be a coach. He's wise and mature. He'll understand that a coach will have to exclude him, and he'll accept it, won't he? Not in your life. When he was excluded, he was very hurt, put it as mildly as I can. He was so upset that he brought his gum shield in his pocket on the day of the final test in case that he'd be called out. We hear these documentaries lately. Ronan O'Gara, when he didn't get his place, he was the only one dropped. He felt awful. Paudie O'Shea, the Lord to mercy him, he said, I didn't speak to Mick Dwyer for 6 years when he was dropped. So the point we're making is, look, if these experienced, wise, mature adults feel so fragile at being excluded, what must it be like for children to be excluded? So we're asking you to bear that in mind. Now, having listened to the few messages that we have delivered so far, tá ceist ag Paudie a gcuibh.
Yeah, you know we're Moontory, because there's always an old ceist, isn't there? Like, you know, we'll always throw out a ceist. Agus on ceist atá going, the little question we have is, just thinking about yourself as a second there, and each and every child has a huge need to feel that they belong. In your personal approach to competitive inter-club games, do you as a coach cater for this need to belong? Would you say you do it very successfully, or not so successfully? That's just one for you to think about. Because I know myself, thinking back over the years, and I think a sign of a good coach is a good coach does a lot of reflecting. And you say, right, I've done that now, listen, can I do it any better? And I think that would be one of the things that we would say, let's reflect today. So, as regards yourself, are you in A, B, or C category? If you're in A, why, you're doing great. We've spoken about the child's need to belong. We've spoken about the child's really strong drive towards modelling and imitating behaviour that they see from adults. Another one that they would have a massive need for. Children have a massive need to have fun, and by having fun, they can learn.
I suppose, you know, we're all here at this coaching conference. We were listening last night to statistics about endurance, statistics about which is the best form of training, wearing GPS. And we're so serious about it, maybe, that sometimes we forget that, look, this is a pastime. This is fun. This is recreation. This is a break from family, work, from school or studies. And if a person is going to go training, the least they expect that it's not a test of endurance, that is enjoyable. And sometimes we lose sight of that. So as a coach, we must make sure that there's plenty of opportunity for laughter. You know, this can be done. There's always characters in every group of players. Let them have the joke. You know, you can build in routines in the warm-up where there's the odd man out and they all have an old laugh at that, you know. So we have to keep the perspective. Make sure that there's plenty of room for lightheartedness and laughter in our sessions. I once asked an inspector if he had only 15 minutes to make an assessment in a school, which class would he go to? And he immediately said, oh, I wouldn't go to any class, he said. And I said, what would you do? I'd spend 5 minutes watching the parents dropping the children in the morning. I'd spend 5 minutes inside in the staff room with the staff at the break. And I'd spend 5 minutes at the yard at lunchtime. And what would you be listening for? I'd be listening for laughter, he said, because when people are laughing, they're in harmony. And this is the best environment for learning. So we must make sure that we are creating an environment that's enjoyable, because at the end of the day, that's the best environment for learning. And one sure way to kill the laughter is endless speeches followed by endless drills. How many times have you gone to a session and the coach stands up and he gives the boys a big speech about the match the last day? And you see the fellas hanging around there, you know, they're ready to go. And the next thing, the second selector says, and John, I've something to add to that then. He goes on for 5 more minutes. And then the third selector walks in from this. And another thing, in my day we always did this, there's nothing more that turns players off more than listening to long, boring speeches and endless drills. So the Go games is fantastic in this respect because, as we said, everybody gets a run and everybody gets to play all the time. And another thing that I think is very important with dealing with children, that in the Go games we say stop the game and fix the skill. I think that when we stop the game, before we fix the skill, we have to use what we call a sandwich model. Give the child a bit of praise for what they're doing well. Correct the skill, more praise, and off we go again. For instance, if you're correcting a child that they're throwing the ball too high when they're striking it, beforehand said, look, John, you're doing really well there, your pickups are excellent. Now, don't throw the ball as high when you're pucking it. Look, you're working really hard today, well done, off you go again. They go off and they're full of enthusiasm. So that sandwich model of praise, correct, praise, use that all the time in your coaching. Paudie, you have some experiences in that as well.
Yeah, well, just to pick up what Jody said first about the fun, I know that I'm involved with Ballyboden St Enda's and I have them over the years, but when you meet lads, what they always think back on is the funny instances. They won't, as Jody said, they won't remember your great drills. I remember we brought a team down to Cork a few years ago and the Cork club said they'll pick us up at the station, at Cant station. We'll have a bus for you, boy. We arrived down. There's somebody there who worked in the prison services. They had a big black Mariah. They threw us all into the back of this black Mariah, right? Parents and all. Completely pitch black. And they drove us out to the club grounds. The boys thought this was the best crack that they ever had. There was mothers falling around the floor. They couldn't see where they were going. But that's what the lads will remember, as Jody said, on the games-based approach. Look, 36 years teaching, myself and Jody, no child has ever come to me and said, teacher, I'm really looking forward to doing a drill today. It has never happened, ever. And I think as regards adults, it's the same thing. They want a game. I believe in the 80-20 approach. 80% of the session should be games of some description. Then take them out, you do the little drill, you work on something, intervention, back in. But 80-20, games. And games don't have to be 15 aside. Remember, if it can be counted, it's a game. If it can be counted. Rory McIlroy, there was a YouTube video of when he was a kid, I think he was about 4 or 5, chipping a tennis ball into, I think it was the washing machine or the dryer or something at home. If it can be counted, it's a game. Give them games. So the games-based approach is hugely important. Now, okay, then what are the challenges for us? Well, the challenges for us, I suppose, would be, first of all, when we get the old banished door bib, and I'm the same myself, you know, you're under pressure. I think club coaches are under a lot of pressure. And I think the club needs to take the pressure off the coaches. You're coaching the club under 10 or under 12 team. Parents judge you. They've only the one model, right? They want their child to play, but they also want the team to win. We need to pull back a bit from that. We need to explain this within clubs. Child, youth, adult, it's a great model in clubs. I'm amazed this time of the year, I'm amused. You know, all the time that we're spent in clubs looking for a senior manager for the senior hurling team or senior football team, scouring the country, looking for the best person for the job. I sometimes think, wouldn't it be great if even 1/10 of that energy was put into looking for a manager or a coach for the under-12 team? Because that's where all the damage is done. So when we get the banished door bib, there can be a real tension between our needs, my needs as the banished door, to pick the best team to win the game, pick the best, discard the rest. And then we have a huge issue as well because society and media, look at the models they give us of what is good management. Right? Now, this guy was obviously incredibly successful. You'd have to say hats off to him. And what he did, and his hairdryer treatment and all the rest of it is legendary. That's fine. But the problem is when people think that that model that Alex Ferguson engaged in, that is appropriate at child level. It's not, or it's not appropriate at youth level. And it's also questionable whether it's appropriate at adult level in our games. So we're under the pressure then because society and the media, they give this model of what is success, whereas we would go back and we would say, our notion of success is somebody who 10 years on, a coach who 10 years on, will have as many children as possible playing and enjoying the game. The other one that's come up in society now as well would be the pushy parent. And they're there. There was a great article there by Gary Lineker, the English Soccer International, in October's New Statesman. Fantastic article. If you Google it, you'll get it. And he had this great line, he said. He was talking about the long ball culture in England and how English football has been ruined. This madness is only exacerbated by the maniacal parents on the touchline spouting nonsense at their children. The competitive nature of most mums and dads is astounding. So what can we do? One suggestion would be that, and Jody and myself would do it, at the start of the year, the start of the season, call the parents in and explain, look, this is an under-10 team. This is what we're trying to achieve. These are our values for the year. Because we have to re-educate parents as to what's involved. I had a very funny experience there about 2 years ago. I took the under-11 football team in school, myself and another teacher, and about 50 lads. And the first thing we had to work out, we had about 3 or 4 teams, and we just mix and match and bring different. We got a great laugh out of it because the parents every week would be asking us, where are we now in the league? And I said, we're not anywhere. Oh, did we not get 2 points there? You know, we won that match. I said, I can give you 10 points if you like. You know? And we had to rewire them because what they were trying to work out the whole time was what was the A team and what was the B team and what was the C team. And we kept juggling the whole thing around. And we had them completely confused. But like, you have to rewire parents about what the expectations are. So there's a lot of madness involved in the situation. Jody is a cash div.
I suppose just reflecting on that, with respect to the team that you're involved with at the moment, we'd like to ask you to reflect to see what emphasis you put on A, winning, B, enjoyment, C, performance. As Paudie says, managers, there's a lot of pressure on managers, but we have to think of the child, the youth and the adult model of what's appropriate. And even at the adult model, a team can have a fantastic season and end up that there's no canister on the table, as they say, but it could be still a fantastic season. Okay, moving on, I suppose one thing that Paudie and myself would have learned over the years working with children, don't ever predict who's going to be the stars or who's going to be the who won't make it. If you try that, and with all our experience, you'll end up with plenty egg in your face. So maybe have a look at a few here.
Yeah, I suppose I just introduced it by saying that the club I'm involved with here in Dublin, Ballyboden St Enda's, we had 8 lads on the Dublin hurling team, the panel that won the Leinster Championship this year, which was fantastic to have so many ex-pupils and players involved. But if you had asked me when they were in 4th, 5th and 6th, would some of those guys have made inter-county hurlers, I would have said, I'll eat my hat. Because, as Jody said, children develop at different stages. And what we do in the GAA, I think, is quite dangerous. We are making decisions when kids are 12, 13, 14 years of age that will have no bearing, you know what I mean, in terms of their psychological and physical development. We're writing off kids at 14 and they could be great players at 20. I would have serious concerns, as would Jody, about this whole development squad idea. Picking the best 20 kids in a county at 14 has, as I think myself, is fraught with danger. Larry Corbett never played minor for Tipperary, and he probably wasn't good enough at the time. Derek Ling never played minor under 21 for Kilkenny. Shawnee McMahon, Brian Lohan.
Brian Lohan, yeah.
Did they play minor for Clare, Jody?
No, Brian Lohan didn't get on the Harty Cup team of his school. Didn't get on the Harty Cup team of the school. And the fellow who probably got on his place is probably never did a thing afterwards. He's a good junior B mentor in our club.
All right. Have a look at these. We have a few clips coming up here. We want you to have a look at these. These are a couple of the Dublin Ballyboden and the Cracklow Clare lads. Have a look at these, and Jody has one or two interesting things to say at the end. I've said my piece about our guys. Some of them I would have predicted. They were physically strong, they were technically very good, but others I wouldn't.
That's a brilliant piece of catching there by Conor Ryan. He's had a superb match. Can he finish it off with a point here? What about that wonderful score? Oh, it's his first ever in the championship.
In goes Conor O'Sullivan, but emerging from it is Conor McGrath, and he means danger. He's got a player over. He buries it in the back of the court net. Conor McGrath, 60.
This match so far, giving everything. It's only his third championship match when he made his debut against Galway in the quarter-final. Out as far as Podge Collins, change of direction, and then goes forward, impishly carrying it this way and that like an egg and spoon race, finally hitting it beautifully onto the netting and over the bar. How about that?
Could argue that Dotson was actually holding on to his Shane's hurling.
Great catch by Conor.
What a catch! The city of our country. But what about this by Keeney? 5 Leinster Football Championship medals, 1.
Across again to O'Callaghan. It's a tactic that has worked well for Dublin in the second half. Can O'Callaghan finish it? Passes the ball out, and it's a great strike. And a point by Shane Durkin, the substitute, and the teams are level again.
For some spectacular goals in Croke Park. Ball inside first, Joe Canny. Great hands, great shot. What a save! Gary Maguire.
Jody, you have one or two good stories about some of your fellas there.
You know, the way fellas will be chatting in the off-season about who will get on the club team and who will get on the Clare team or the county team for the coming year. This time last year, I guarantee you, Podge Collins and Conor Ryan wouldn't have been on many fellas' lists for being on the Clare team. And I saw one fella wrote out a Cracklow club team, and Podge was only vying for another fella at corner forward. And the two of them are all-stars at the end of the year. So much for the judgment of people on the bar stools. Now, we spoke earlier about, you know, if we're to create solid foundations for the pathways of children through youth, through child, youth, adult, it must be built on solid foundations. And the foundation stones are the family, the school, and the club. Now, you know, all families want their children to be catered for. So the GAA must ensure that the family is reassured that all the needs of the children are catered for, and all the children are catered for, not just the elite children. Because as we've said already about exclusion, that's a big turn-off. And there must be good communication between the family, the school, and the community. And the club must ensure that it sends out the clear message of what its values are for the children in their care. Now, the GAA is offering a fantastic variety of games to cater for everybody, and I suppose families are delighted when the boys are catered for, the girls are catered for, the mums and the dads can go to the games. In Cracklow, where we are, we're between Shannon and Limerick. Okay, we'd have some GAA families, traditional, some that would be interested in other sports, maybe rugby in Limerick, and some from overseas that would move in. But all of them, if the club provides something that attracts all of them, that brings them in. And if we can cultivate all the values we spoke about, belonging, caring, looking after, there's a lot of those players that you saw on the screen could easily have played soccer, and especially rugby in Limerick, because you know, the Munster rugby team is highly successful. But if they're looked after, they will stay with the club.
Just on that one, Jody, you were telling me an interesting one about Conor Ryan, a story about him and a rugby club.
Conor Ryan, is a fantastic rugby player. When he went to art school, Reach in Limerick, and they have hurling and rugby. But he was obviously courted by rugby clubs, but he was playing GAA at the time and up as far as under 16, and he went to a match one night. He had trained for hurling on a Tuesday night, and there was an under 16 rugby final on Thursday night, and the coach said, look, you weren't training on Tuesday, you will be a sub tonight, okay? Bye boys, just Connor to rugby. He never went back again. So they're the fine margins like that dictate the choices people will make. Also, another thing in Cratloe, it was traditionally a hurling club, but a lot of families that moved in over the years came from football areas. And the debate was like, you know, should the club concentrate solely on hurling? But in the school, I always had a child-centred approach. Let them play whatever game they want, facilitate as many children as they want. So we facilitate football in the club, and that attracts a lot of families in. And this year, when we were knocked out of the hurling, like they went on and won the football for the first time in 136 years. And the amount of joy that brought to a wide range of families was unbelievable. And when we were talking there about the family, the school and the club being very active, sometimes mentors from teams come to us and they say, it is grand for you, but what about our school? Our school does nothing. Paudie, what would you have done?
Yeah, you sometimes hear that, like, you know, and I suppose a few things I'd say. I think club people need to understand there is no obligation on teachers, principals or schools to promote Gaelic games. It's not part of the contract of employment. And sometimes clubs can be very, very critical without actually going in and finding out. You know, I think it's much better if you open a dialogue. Now, there may be a lack of interest, but also nowadays I think there may be that people are lacking in confidence or competence. And Jody and myself do a good bit of work with newly appointed principals, and I was down in South Offaly this week with a group. And you'd want to see the health and safety manuals that are being delivered to principals, 120 pages of audits to be filled out. So very, very often there may be reasons, and it's up to the club to go in there and try and find out, can a link be established? Because the children do miss out if Gaelic games are not done in the school. But we'd say, go in and have a look. Building for the future, our minor teams from our own club there, boys and girls, a few points I'll make. Only 2 or 3 of those players will actually play on senior club level. But when we look at a team, we try and see, well, in our minor hurlers this year, 12 of them were involved in the club, coaching in the nursery and helping out with underage teams. 3 of them are refereeing. The future administrators are there. The future IT experts are there. But if we're wiping kids out at a very, very early age, and if we're only focusing exclusively on those who are really good players, we are losing an awful lot of potential talent who would make a complete, massive contribution to the club in a general sense. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. And that's what we're emphasising. It's all about building relationships. The point we're making here is that if you want children to stay with the game, we're talking about fostering a love of the Gaelic games, okay, you have to provide excellent skill development. You must facilitate the development of competence, because that engenders confidence and builds up esteem. But you must provide really solid social support structures for the children. You must create a warm, caring environment, because as the quote here says, they'll forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And on that one then, a big debate, how come we're losing so many players? There's nothing wrong with the games. We have the best games in the world. And the question again, we just ask you to reflect on Mullinoiga agus Tukishi, praise the youth and they'll come on. With regard to your own club, how successful is your club at retaining players and bringing them through to adult level? Are you very successful, or not so successful? Maybe just having to think about that question, because I think that is the real key one.
We'll just talk here about the wheel coming the full circle.
It wasn't just for the sake.
We asked him to, to reflect on that picture that was taken when he was in junior infants, and what were his thoughts on it. And the second thing I asked him was, what's his favourite type of training with all the drills that inter-county players have nowadays.
I said to Lads it wasn't just for the sake of it that I said it, but that I would consider that one of my earliest memories. Like, I probably don't remember my first day in primary school, but I'd remember that day, because I remember being outside and I remember a few of us arguing over who would hold the flags at the back. And No, it was brilliant. I remember the day. I don't remember a huge amount, but I just remember being outside and actually taking that picture and we standing up the back, and it was brilliant to see it. I think we saw it then recently, and it was just brilliant to see kind of strike a chord in your head. Then, geez, we were back then, and we were only aspiring to be these kind of guys, and
yeah.
A few years time now, fellas, hopefully be trying to emulate
the same, exactly.
Because we did have the crowd back then, and I suppose even when we were young as first class, you probably saw the older lads out playing, and you wanted to go out and play with the older lads. But no, they were, especially for me, they were the happiest memories of primary school as a whole. Probably was going down hurling after school on a Tuesday, Thursday evening. It was always you bring your gear in with you, and you'd stop in a shop on the way down for an old sticky toffee bar or something, and you get down, then you'd walk, and you'd be trying to climb over the wall and getting boosted up over the wall to train and all. But yeah, those were the days where you nearly look forward to going on walking down the train after school, and it was school might have been finished, but you were meant to go down training then after that. I suppose it was always a match.
A match.
Whatever, even when we were younger, it was always a match. You just love to be competing, you love to be out there. It's a shooting, I suppose, as well. That was never my strong point, but shooting and match as well. But the best thing about it, I remember you'd even get it when you're down with the kids in the pitch. The minute they don't want to know about drills, it's just when we play the match, and it might not even be about winning. It's just so fellas can showcase all their skills and stuff.
I just want to asking him back there, I was hoping he'd say that he was really inspired by David Fitzgerald at the front, but he said, no, I remember fighting with the lads at the back about which of us had held the flag. And when I asked him about John training, he said, I remember stopping in the shop and getting sticky toffees on the way down. Wouldn't be recommended in the diet of a modern day player, but it just goes to show you that what children remember.
And just to wrap up then, I suppose, came across this piece recently from Patrick Kavanagh, written many years ago. And I think it reflects the role of a coach and the role of a teacher. He's talking about his last couple of days in 6th class in primary school. And he says, 3 things I remember from my school days, 3 things of joy which have not been entirely futile. The first is the hymn, Hail Queen of Heaven. The second, that girl's reading of Mangan's poem. And third, the things Miss Cassidy said to me on her last day in school. She sat facing me and held my hands. Her face was green and haggard. She was dying of cancer of the stomach. A few weeks before this day, one of her pupils had been sent to high school. Oh, Patrick, she said, with all the pathos and sympathy of a sick woman, if you could get to high school, you'd leave them all behind. She spoke her heart to mine for half an hour. I cannot remember the exact words she said. She spoke brokenly, appealingly, wistfully. She believed in me. And really, I suppose, what we're talking about is when you're coaching children, it's about that relationship and that belief that you have in them that they can be the very best that they can be.
And I suppose finally to conclude, if we are to inspire the children, encourage them to stay, we must reach out to try to A, understand their needs and B, cater for them. The need to be safe, the need to belong, the need to be challenged, and the need to have fun. And as all of you adults are grown-up children, I hope you have fun for the rest of the day, and I hope you have a great days of learning. And go to Míle Maithagh for listening to us.